You know, I started out in the publishing business, and it was magazines particularly. You know, I got snatched up from a high school newspaper called New Youth Connections in like 85, 86, and came in under Leo Cohen, you know, and Russell Simmons in like 86, 87, and you know, just went straight into magazines. My area of expertise is like, you know, I have a lot of different firsts. You know, I was the first magazine A&R, like, you know, journalists, hip-hop journalists, A&R. But my real area of expertise was really print. You know, that's writing is my #1 hat, and you know, phonetic spelling in this industry is pretty much, you know, been coined because of my particular writing style. You know, which I always call radio graffiti. You know, it's just became a brand. You know, it became synonymous with hip hop and with hip hop spelling. So, you know, that's, you know, I went on, you know, thank God, to do other things like, you know, when I got to the Source magazine and I saw how Dave and John, you know, how they got money together to get, you know, the Source van, you know, the first Source van, and then, you know, that was a beautiful van, man. That's, you know, you talk about 20 speakers, you know, 10 speakers on each side. And it was just banging. We had, you know, a mixer in the back, but you had all kinds of stuff. You had, you know, there was Sega, there was Sprite was a contributor to that, but, you know, it was the first of a kind. You know, that was definitely, you know, it was a prototype. And then, you know, years later, it got to, within 10 years, you're talking about like 8 trucks like that. The whole industry having, you know, different you know, trucks that have their brand and their identity, you know, the vehicles, the street vehicles, the street van. So, you know, it was a major influence, man. Everybody saw that before. One of the biggest brands in the history of the world, you know, for Think Small, they already was putting TV commercials out, you know, in '91. You know, Tribe Called Quest had a commercial. I'm sure, like, not PE, but several of Rush associated label artists, you know, which was primarily Def Jam and everybody else that was underneath Russell, had, you know, a few different joints, especially with Sprite. You know, Sprite was the first ones. Not that, even though it was a Coca-Cola company, it was Sprite, you know, specifically as a brand that was doing the hip-hop commercials, you know. And so that's why when it came down to the Source van, you don't see the Coca-Cola logo, you see the Sprite logo on there, because they were already like, you know, here's Coca-Cola, we want to protect our flagship brand, but here's Sprite, you know, let's use this to experiment, you know. Sprite, you know, this is you know, for lack of a better term, and say, you know, we challenge the next generation, which is Pepsi. You know, let's go out there and it's like, yeah, we got the youth, let's show them that we got the next generation too, especially in the urban areas. So they were already in that market. You know, it's just became very subtle. City was on fire. You know, crack had just taken a major stranglehold now. You know, now it was national. And we were late. You know, New York was late. So it had already swept the country from left to east. So, you know, by the time that it gets to New York, you know, DC already was flooded. Philly already was flooded. Texas was already flooded. You know, maybe Boston was already hit. However, although we had it only in certain pockets. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, just, you know, primarily, it wasn't like cocaine where you could get it, you know, more readily because it's a much more expensive drug. You know, it's still, crack still came out in the urban economic areas, the ghettos, because it was, you know, hand in hand $5, you know, little money, so you were able to control. But the explosion was too big, you know what I mean? It spilled over. So the city now is just wretched. Plus we're getting an influx of you know, the music was just ridiculous, man. We got all kinds of stuff coming out. Road to the Riches, Coogee Rap. You got, you know, PE dropping B-side wins again. you know, one of my favorite B-side records that they came out but their, you know, initial joint was Bum Rush the Show. They coming out with Bum Rush the Show. What the hell is this? And you got an image of like a, you know, a group of dudes just bum rushing the DJ, stopping the music, you know, provocative. But, you know, they were really saying something and using hard sound to say it. You already got Run DMC, which is, you know, they have ushered in now rock and rap together. You got two of the hardest elements in music coming together. Shows with Aerosmith, give me on the verge of, yo, this is huge. Then you got Salt and Pepper. Salt and Pepper over there, I Desire. Them chicks looking hot coming out of Queens, with the Dapper Dan, the whole Dapper Dan look. So here's the backdrop. Here's New York City, black and white. Graffiti all on the subways. Kids crying, dudes smoking in the back. Last car, yo, where you live at, shorty? You know what I'm saying? Drinking 40s. Yo, what you looking at, nigga? You know what I mean? Getting pulled out. Yeah, so what size you wear, kid? They're getting hemmed up back there. You had to have something, that you holding something to even sit back there. You know what I mean? I don't even think the conductor wanted to open the doors back there because it wasn't safe. So, but then here's the color. The color is the Dapper Dan outfits. The color is the music. The music is bringing the color. The color is the culture bringing the color. Now, you know, Sprite, we gotta get involved. Even though that this looks really dismal out here, there's some good stuff happening. You know, and it's the music, you know, and it's the culture that's driving it. You still got breakdance. You got Rocksteady crew battling other crews. You got mad other crews battling, coming. We got shows. There were hip-hop shows even far back as then. No fights going on. You know what I mean? People ain't out in front of the joint, the venue, you know, with a torch burning crack. It was not seen. It was not happening. Maybe, you know, you dip away, you know, smoke some pot here, there, or maybe something else, but it was not out in the open. And primarily, these people were not about that. So you still had some good stuff happening. You know, you had the color there, you know, as far as like the culture, the progressiveness of the movement. Here, you know, there's peace, there's love, there's unity, there's having fun. And in the backdrop, it's like, here's capitalism. You know, here's this monster gray blob that's just gonna be, you know, little by little, it's gonna be taking over the whole country. You know, people just didn't see, except for the drug dealers and the suppliers. Like, yo, just wait, it's coming. You know, New York City having 5 families, 1 for each borough. More than any other city, you know, in the United States. We got 5 record labels. You know what I'm saying? 1 for each borough. You know, more than any other place in the United States, especially since hip-hop, you know, universally is known for coming out of the Bronx. All right, you got these different, you know, labels. You got these different, you know, labels battling each other, different families, if you will. Your membership to each family is identified. You're identified by your jacket. You know, those jackets didn't come about until the late 80s, the early 90s. You know, out of all the labels, you know, Sugar Hill and Joy, you know, you had P-Long Records. You had Profile that had you know, the major money behind it, and especially with Russell being successful of signing Run DMC to Profile, you know. So now you see, you know, the corporation can see it like, yo, there's big money here. You know, Run DMC is the first ones to break American Bandstand. They're in China. These dudes are in Russia. You know what I mean? This ain't, you know, we thought it was going to only last 6 weeks. You know, this is major. So all the corporations like Sprite, like we were talking about, as far as beverages and stuff like that, you know, now you got a whole generation, a whole culture to market to. But, you know, with that comes the challenge. You know, it comes to corruption of the culture. You know what I mean? Because things now are being settled with an envelope. Conversations happening under the table. Behind the scenes, there's more going on for the bigger picture. There wasn't no big picture to us, really, other than we could get a check for this. For a corporation, the big picture is we could corner the market in this. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is, in several different markets across the, you know, the country, if not the world. This is going to be huge. We already have a world presence. Coca-Cola, Sprite, you know, Adidas. We have a world presence already. We're going to be selling product like crazy because of these kids, because of this culture. You know, even if it gets worse, you know, economically, where crack takes hold and this, you know, this backdrop of black and white and gray, dismal, you know, city life, this is going to be so bright and shining that we could be the ones that light up this beacon because of the money that we infuse into this product, you know, and that way we'll control the market. Now they're very smart, you know. You're talking about not only that, but you know, the creation of a business ecosystem. You know, imagine just a plant starts growing here and pollen over here and some seeds over here. Sooner or later, you're going to have a jungle. You give it enough time, you're going to have something buck wild out here. But the thing is that each one of those plants produces something that the other one needs. Okay? Now, every other economic, or excuse me, any other ethnicity as well as economic group, you know, based on ethnicity, knows this. Black people are the ones who have the most difficult time wrapping our thoughts around it, you know, and seizing the opportunity because we have the lack of the funds. But every other group has created a business ecosystem. Koreans deal with themselves. Jews deal with themselves. You know, Hungarians, Polish, Russians, especially communistic countries, China, they're forced to deal with themselves because nobody wants to. Mexico, you know what I mean? It's actually doing both. That is the strength of the group. That is the mentality that the corporations brought to the table. You know, in my particular case, you know, I'm writing for magazines, but before that, and even for a while I was doing that, I'm still bombing trains. Like I'm still hitting trains. You know, I'm going to yards in the middle of the night, you know, cans of spray paint, you know, bottles of ink, you know, I'm challenging other writers, I'm robbing other writers, I'm getting it in. So, you know, rap to me, you know, meeting a rap or you know, hearing the challenge from somebody like Ice-T was like, you know, freedom of speech, watch what you say, because it was the West Coast, you know, as far as I particularly know of, that swung on a journalist first with BONZ, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, I get a call and it's like, yeah, they're swinging on journalists now. And then all of a sudden I hear Ice-T, freedom of speech, watch what you say. Well, you know, my attitude was like, bring it. And yeah, I'm with this all day. I'm with this all day. I'm robbing other writers. You know what I mean? I'm in the dark doing that. Under the city in the dark doing that. Forget about somebody that I can't see. You know what I mean? I'm already home now. Like, you know, they were already thinking about me. It was like, yo, BONZ is somebody's replacement. This dude, you know, he embodies hip hop. He didn't come out of college. He came out of high school writing for magazines on a national level. He changed the way phonetically everything is spelled. You know, he's cornering his own publishing, you know, piece of this thing, and with hip hop, and you know, you can't do anything, you know, with hip hop and rap, especially, you know, affecting rap music without magazines. So we were the gatekeepers for the record labels, you know, and that was a position of tremendous respect that we were in. There's people like Puffy wanted to be like us, man. You know, even though you were doing A&R, you know, I was doing A&R too. I'm over at Island 4th and Broadway. We had Eric B and Rakim. What the fuck you at? We had the best living rapper in history. What the fuck you at? You know what I mean? I'm coming over there with Mobb Deep. I had Biggie. I had Fat Joe. I had Wu-Tang Clan because I'm at the source. So I had Unsigned Hype with my man Matty C. You know what I mean? So I'm getting pitched anything that goes to Unsigned Hype, anything that came through the Fat Tape. You know what I mean? Check the history of the source, the Fat Tape. Who was behind that? These brothers is blessing me with music. I had the pick of the litter. I had anybody that I wanted. Puff didn't have that. There was nobody in the game. Andre Harrell didn't have that. There was nobody in the game that had that type of strength that I had. Plus, I was writing for the magazine and doing everybody else's bio. So I saw the corporations by the mid-90s, Sprites and the Coca-Colas and the Adidas and Nike and the different labels that now are you know, the Gambinos, the Genevieves, the Lucchese families of music, the big whopping niggas, you know, juggernauts, throwing money at rappers to get on soundtracks for movies. Get them on a soundtrack. We're gonna just, you know, we're gonna make more money than we did before. Well, how did they know that they were gonna do that? Because of the movies that's already been marketed to the urban market. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, you know what I'm saying? Juice, which was my first project that I did with Chris Blackwell. You know, I was the script consultant for Juice. He asked me to read the script. He said, how much do you think we should invest? I said, what's the number? He said $3 million. I was like, do that. You make it in the first day. He's still making money off Juice. We didn't know the possibilities, but you know, we knew it when Russell is the one that actually made it possible with Crush Group. You know, so the paradigm was there. Everybody had a piece of the action and had a piece of the contribution in the progression to hip-hop culture and rap the business. But here is, you know, the corporation that was looking down, seeing the overall pie and be like, let's take the most lucrative parts of it. So by the mid-90s, you got soundtracks going on. And even if rappers weren't any actors, which I don't believe, I think a lot of these niggas was actors from day one because them niggas is still soft. You know, they put them on the soundtrack and in movies to generate more sales. It wasn't about you having chops and acting ability and able to listen. You know, it was about we can maximize the box office even more, you know, by having them on the soundtrack. But, you know, let's find a place to put them in. Like Juice, like Crush Group, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, which Ice Cube took that and ran. You know what I mean? Colors, which Ice-T took that and ran. No matter how you feel about it, and me and that dude, you know, haven't seen eye to eye on the same page for like, you know, over 20 years because of one situation. The dude's getting paid every day of his life. He'll never have to work again. He's in syndication. He's in a totally different place. So, you know, that's what happens, you know what I'm saying, when the corporations came in. By the mid-90s, we had literally went from cassette tapes that cab drivers in New York City used to promote for the Cold Crush, for the Fantastic Romantic Five, for Busy Bee, you know, Love Bug, and you know, probably like Cool Herc and the Herculoids, playing it in the cab while you want to go over and catch a bag from the Hardest Hard, you know what I mean, over there on St. Nick, to having jet planes, man. We went from cassette tapes to jet planes. That's what it is. We would have never been able to do that had not we carried a bag across the street and not ask any questions, you know? You know, when a dude who takes off his apron and puts on his Brooklyn leather jacket and says, you want to make some money? The answer is hell yeah. That's what we're here to do, make some money. You had a lot of people who was writing about the culture, about the music, that loved it, but spoke about it and spoke about artists from a fan's perspective. And quickly, for anybody who's discerning, you know, in eye and ear, you'd be like, that person was bought, you know, just with the opening line. I'm sitting in, you know, I'm sitting in the back of a Maybach with so and so, and it's just a usual day for them. You know what I mean? It's just, it was homogenized, a lot of the stuff. You know, there were some others who kept their integrity, you know, but that's a personal choice. But by that time, what I'm saying is that, you know, we're now already in a short span of like 10, 12, maybe 15 years from like the birth of crack, we're deep in it now, man. Journalism and writing is my #1 hat. By the time 2000 came around, You know, I was out of jail. The film that I wrote in jail had just won Sundance. We had won Cannes behind that. You know, 2 top awards. You know, the very top award in America and the second highest in France.
What film was that?
That was Slam. You know, and that was '98 when we tore that down. So going over there in 2 different time zones, or in the same year, we're able to see 2 different places, like the pinnacles of power. You know, I just talked about like how movies and movie corporations, MGM, Universal, and stuff like that, how they saw the emergence of hip hop culture and how it could be on their soundtracks to movies, and then how to bring them into movies. You know, with every advantage like that, you're creating bigger monsters. You're making a lot of money, but you're planting dangerous seeds in the minds of many people who can't handle that type of responsibility. Don't even know what to do with that, you know, or at least know when to cool it down when it gets too far. Sharon Stone over there dancing with, you know, Lennox Lewis. You know what I'm saying? Like, wildness, man. Like, you're at the top now, you know? And nobody had no shades, man. You know what I'm saying? Vampires, that's when I learned up there, man. Vampires don't wear shades no more, man. That's the movies. That is the movies, okay? That's in Lost Boys. And something like, sometimes they come back, something like that, man. That's on TV. They wear shades. Real vampires look you in the eye. So we saw it trickle down from there, and by 2000, man, it had just got to such a a level of hubris where it was just out of control. The attitude, the arrogance. You know, we were paying for our own hits. You know, literally. You know what I'm saying? We got a problem with another rapper, pay it to go away. We lost Big, we lose Pop over stupidness, man. Stupidness. I don't believe that it's because of jealousy, because they both were great. So somewhere along the lines, that, you know, like they say, you follow the money. You follow the money, you find out who got paid, you find out really, you know, what happened. You give it enough time, what happened. And a lot of stuff has happened. And you know, that was like snitch rap, or, you know, what I call rap music. Rap music was really in effect. Now you're making songs incriminating yourself, man. You know, giving evidence of you being involved in serious crimes for entertainment purposes. You know, painting yourself a negative picture with the gun, the smoking gun in your hand, without no bandana, without no mask, for street cred, so you can sell more units. Now here's the same corporations that built you up, like, yo, hold it. We need to take a step back, like we had to do when C. Dolores Tucker and Bob Dole came to town, putting on that, slapping on that, you know, that advisory sticker, want to go to the boycott and stuff like that. It's hold it, let me take a step back. If we do the knowledge of that, there was only one clear winner in that whole paradigm back, you know, 10 years prior to 2000, and that was Interscope. Interscope was the clear winner because they didn't pull out of shit. They didn't pull out of nothing. They rolled that gangster wave to the end. They're still riding it, bruh. Ted Fields, Jimmy Iovine, who's now running the ship over there, they seen wars, man. They seen storms. You know, forget about Jerry Heller and all of that, man. You know, they seen storms after Eazy-E and Jerry Heller is out of the picture. If you survive longer than Death Row, nigga, and they were on your label, you're a bad motherfucker. I'm telling you that shit right now. Those are some serious fucking gangsters over there, man. And they don't got no families like New York. So that whole mentality of, like, you know, we don't need no mob family over here type shit is very, very real in the West Coast, man. They don't need that shit over there. You can tell by the music. The music enough is hard enough to control. You must be out of your mind. You want to go over there and try to take some shit over. So by 2000, we're all corrupted, man. Everybody in this shit got blood on their hands, got dirt on their suit, It ain't Easter, man. You know, that's one thing you got to be real clear about. You know, this type of machine cannot destroy itself, or else it would have happened already. It's like the stock market or something like that. The whole, you know, the whole American financial system, or the, you know, the World Bank itself. It would have happened already if it was able to just collapse. This shit ain't just gonna collapse. You have to smash it. You gotta smash it, man. You know, or else it'll just completely, you know, regenerate itself. It'll keep fixing itself, man. No matter how far down, it'll climb back out of that abyss. You have to shut it down. You gotta crush the whole thing for it to start over. You know, there's no way to clean it, because it was built on dirty money anyway. I mean, for people that have record labels, they don't just give Jeezy a record label. They don't just give Master P a label. You know what I'm saying? Baby a label. You gotta have so much crack and drug money to launder that shit that you're given a label. Now you can declare that shit on paper. You can tax the black money. That's what the Jews taught the mob to do. That's why they went into Vegas using Teamster money. You can't just fucking show up there with all this money. Where'd you get that shit from? You got millions. Nobody else has that. How'd you get that? Especially from the street. But if you have a record label in association with Universal, Sony, that's great. Columbia, that's great. Now you can declare it. Everybody's happy. Everybody gets a piece of the action. Money made the fantasy real. That's what Hollywood is all about. You know what I mean? Hollywood. It's magic. What makes that real? Money makes that real. Money made the lyrics real. You know, I did all of this in the street. Crack. I sell crack. Money made it real. The minute they got a label, made it real. My man from Rocksteady, the VP of Rocksteady, always said that it was the breakdown of the park jams. That was the breakdown of hip-hop culture that created this entity that rap could just take on this whole different persona, because we were no longer unified. It was no longer coming, you know, there was no longer a space, a development space where we could come together and make something. You know, scratch, cut, dance, sign graffiti books, tag up in people's books, get down with different crews, hear different news in the community, word on the street. When that broke down, you're talking to each other in booths from different locations. And then here comes the beef, and the beef sold units, and then the units make money, and then the hits go out, people show up dead, and then there's strip clubs popping up and chicks in the video. Money made all that real, man. Money made that. Rap music is the biggest casino and the only casino that the urban community has ever seen. Everybody else, you got Aqueduct, you got Empire, you got Atlantic City, you got Vegas, Mohegan Sun. We got rap. We're taking in buco amounts of cash. We don't give a shit about regulation. There is no regulation, man. Boston is down. Chicago is down. Houston is down. Everybody is down. I don't care where you're from. Everybody wants a piece of this. It's a vocation at this point. Rap is a vocation. You go to school to master rap. If you want to be a master at rap and have a shot at being one of the top dudes in this industry, and it's less than 0.0001% to master rap, drop out of school. Ignore all academia. Smoke weed, get high. Bang chicks with unprotected sex. then talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Sell dope to an undercover cop, get locked down, do 5-15, come out, then talk about it. You're in. You're in, son. You're gonna make so much money. Hell, I'll come back from the grave and I'll sign your ass, nigga. I'll tell you that now. That's what it is. That's what it always was. It's never been no other fine print on the end of the contract. It was just invisible ink. That's all. You couldn't see it no matter what vision you had. It was like, there's a price to be paid. That's all. There's a price to be paid. But if you're willing to play this game, you'll get rich. You just probably won't be alive long enough to spend it all. That's a fact. We're gonna make ultimately a lot more, and it's gonna destroy your community. That beautiful shit you had going on back in the 70s and in the 80s with the colorful radios and hats and shit, yeah, that's gone. You can forget about that. You know, and how your mama felt, you know, when you were holding that award, the tears were coming down, you finally made it. Remember that moment and shit? And, you know, you always said you was going to do something good. Well, you can forget that shit too. That's gone. And remember that time that you was, you know, you was going to give to the community and start companies and stuff like that, and, you know, get people to create an entrepreneurial program and stuff like that, so they don't have to necessarily rap to become, you know, what you have become, or even beyond that. Well, you can forget about that shit too, because there's cutbacks, and, you know, you got to tax that money that you're giving away. You got to declare that. So that's coming out of your pocket in two ways, not just one. You don't really want to do that, do you? You don't really want to play this game, do you? It's much easier just to go along under the radar collecting than it is to try to be the one at the top. Because the one at the top is the lightning rod, and they're going to get hit sooner or later. It's too competitive not to. You know, now we got all kind of technology, and, you know, just the stuff that they created and mixing alone is just unbelievable. I saw a mixing board that looks like an iPad, man. It was like an iPad. It was a console board, like a you know, an ASCAN board, man, that big. That it was you know, two areas for turntables, and it looked like you were sitting on the deck of the Enterprise, yo. This is something that Sulu would be handling. Sulu was DJing like this. The sound was crazy. You see mad different colors, purple and yellow. Look like, yo, like the stuff we put on the train in the dark, man. It's unbelievable, the sound. Pounding. It's like, yo, this is the future of DJing. You don't even have turntables no more. There was no mixer. You got a flat screen for music. It's over. This dude was scratching by just tapping a button. Yeah, it's over, man. It's over. You don't see no Sega on that. Sega's gone, nigga. You got Call of Duty. You got some other mad, violent, wild game coming out. And you notice something? They ain't sponsoring no hip-hop. They got their own market. They don't need us no more, man. They don't need us no more. Donkey Kong is over. It's no longer a veil like, yo, this is what we do behind closed doors. You know that already. You can pick up any magazine, any book, talk to somebody, some gossip blog on the internet. Big deal. Big deal. We do coke, we do weed, we get blown up. We do all of this stuff. We got mollies out here. We can get anything we want. We're mixing drugs. You got a TV show on cable that is dedicated to making crystal meth. The whole show. I mean, how many years has that been on? It's in syndication. That's 5 years already? At least. The show is about a teacher in school who enjoys creating crystal meth more than he does teaching school. But what kind of society you want to paint this out to be? Because I can just strike it down and tell you right now, you're out of your mind, yo. You know, this is about zombies. Yeah, zombie, get you, get some clothes, identify yourself as a creepy crawler, get out here, and get with the program. This is the movement that's happening. We're making it as we go along, but it's so decadent and so corrupt now that the music, not only are you snitching on yourself with rap music, you also got rape music. Here it is, I'm gonna throw a molly up in your champagne while you go take a tinkle, and when you come back, I'm pounding you, your mama, I'm pounding somebody else in your family. You don't know any better. Then I'm gonna do a song about it. I'm gonna do a song about it. No, but just wait. Hold on, it gets better than that. I got beef with a dude across town. You know what I'm gonna do after this interview? I'm gonna go over to my computer. I'm gonna jump on YouTube, use my camera, and put a hit out on this dude. And I guarantee you, by tomorrow, after the nigga's dead, I'm gonna come back on, get behind my computer and be like, I told you. And I bet you, before the week is over, I'll have over 1 million hits. All I gotta do that is at least twice to show you it ain't no accident. All I gotta do is show you that I'm not playing any games, that this ain't no accident, and I'm gonna have a hell of a lot of followers, man. And I'm gonna get checks from Google. Like this, son, cheese. Because I'm whacking niggas, and I'm telling you that I'm whacking niggas on the internet. I'm doubling down in hits. You can't stop me, son. I'm the real thing. I'm only 16. I'm just getting started. I'm a product of your environment. Y'all hip-hop niggas back in the 70s and 80s and the early 90s. Shit, I could be their grandfather. That nigga right now is like, yo, what's up, Pops? Good to see you. Want some mollies? He's walking around right now. He got him in his jacket. He got an army jacket on with mollies. Everybody knows, man. The question is, what are you gonna do about it? It ain't about, getting rid of it. You ain't getting rid of it. You can't wipe it clean. I always say, hip-hop, pornography, and organized crime come up in the same neighborhood. We're all from the same street. We just live on different sides of it. That's why we know each other. You walk to the store, I say, what's up to you? I'm not running with you. I don't really rock with you like that, but I say what's up to you because, we're from the same block. It's all in the same neighborhood. We're all underground. And now we have all come above ground, taken the veil off. This is what I do. This is who I am. But I still got respect for the guy that has an apron, man, that's up in the pizza shop, because at least he's going to work every day, someplace that you can see. And I can see behind him that there's still that Brooklyn leather hanging up. That after he gets off, he ain't wearing that apron home. He puts on the Brooklyn leather and continues his life. You know what I mean? But with one condition, he tells everybody, you want to do business with him? He'll do business with you. But don't forget something. Never take the cheese off the pizza. If they don't feel what I'm trying to say, then what I say now
don't make no difference.
Don't make no difference.